Right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're just going to give it another minute, give everybody a chance to get in here. Going to start up our live stream here. Welcome everyone. Just another 30 seconds or so, and then we'll get started. Right. I think the numbers joining are slowing down. We should be able to get started now. All right. Let's do it. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us here on September 9th, 2025 for our coffee session. We, like usual, are sponsored by the California Department of Education today, and we'll be taking you through some prepared topics and then answering questions. We've got a ton of CDE folks and ETS folks and more, and some of our partners from SCOE and such on the call that will be answering questions in the background. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the Zoom Q&A. Like usual, the Zoom chat is closed, but we'll be using that to share some links with you and such. And the first one that's in there is a link to get today's material. So if you'd like to see the slides and the resource guide that has all of the any links that we mentioned should be in that resource guide. We'll also be dropping them in the chat for you, but you should be able to find pretty much everything in that resource guide as well. And if you want to navigate to download those materials, you can either click on that link in the chat, or you can go to our link tree, which you can get to by typing in linktr.ee/Cal Outreach. You click on, you select upcoming training opportunities, find the coffee session under the current month of September, and there you'll see the links to download the resource guide and PowerPoint. All right. So our agenda for today, we are, like usual, going to just go through training opportunities that are coming up soon, talk about new and updated resources that are out. We've got a topic of the LEA preview of results. We're going to talk just a little bit about the Crisis Alert Response System, or CARS. And then our typical prepared topics to finish us out: test security, call drivers, reminders, and then any questions and answers we haven't gotten to at the end. So let's jump into it. Training opportunities. So like usual, at the beginning of the year in the fall, we have a lot of trainings going on. And we'll start by talking about the Interim Informative Assessment Training Series, also called IFA, the IFA training series. We did have sessions over the summer for this, and we are repeating those sessions again in September. There are recordings to view, but another opportunity to attend the Zoom sessions live, which is really helpful for a lot of folks. So you can attend these in September, on September 15th, 17th, and 29th, the first three webinars. So there's webinar 1 is the formative assessment process and tools for teachers. Webinar 2 is the CAASPP and ELPAC interim assessments. A lot of basics and how all those things work. And then webinar 3 is we ran the first one this summer, but it's new this year, the educator panel and shared practices, which will have some LEA guests on to talk about how they use the interim assessments and tools for teachers. A lot of good information, and these are open not only to LEA coordinators, but to site coordinators, to any educators that might be interested in learning more about the interim assessments or the formative assessment process and tools for teachers. So, and then after these three, there'll be hand scoring workshops on Zoom as well in October. So keep an eye out for those as well. All of these are available to register for on our website. We're putting links in the chat as well. But yeah, a lot of good stuff in those. Then a few others. So there are new coordinator training webinars going on pretty much every month now at this point. So on September 18th, webinar number 5, which will cover accessibility, will be taking place. So that is a great that's a great session to go to, even if you're not new, even if you're an experienced coordinator. There's a lot of good information at those always, but especially accessibility is a really important topic, of course. And then on September 24th, there will be a ELPAC and alternate ELPAC. The results are in, now what webinar. And so a lot of good information on actually using ELPAC and alt-ELPAC results. And then for just kind of dipping into October, there'll be a Lexile and Quantile virtual training series that takes place in October as well. So make sure and go check those out. And we've mentioned this before, but very highly recommend you register for the California Assessment Conference. The theme is Assessment in Action, sharing strategies to support student learning. That is happening on November 12th through the 14th in Riverside. Definitely check that out if you are not already registered. It is a great conference with a lot of really great information. And as always, we definitely encourage you to get involved in the assessment development process. We're always looking for educators, so you can use this QR code or just go to our website using the Get Involved link in the navigation to find more info about that. We've got specific item review meeting applications that are open. So we'll just go through these real quick. The California Science Test or CAST IRM or item review meeting. The applications for that close on September 24th. The CSA or California Spanish Assessment IRM closes on October 1st. The CAA for Science application closes on October 29th. And CAA for ELA and Math closes on December 2nd. And all those dates are on the webpage as well. All right, going to quickly go through some new and updated resources for the new administration year. So a lot of our resources get updated, each admin. So just a few things here. The CSA Preparing for Administration or PFA documents, those have been updated. So those are on the Administer a Test Session webpage. There's the Summative LPAC Scale Score Ranges document. That's on the SSR and Reporting Resources webpage. And then there's some like kind of how to start test session documents for the LPAC or the alternate LPAC that have been updated as well on the Administer a Test Session webpage. And then a few trainings from previous months that have had their recordings posted. So if you missed these, but you want to go back and watch what happened, the Assessment and Accountability Information Meeting, also called AIM, there were 2 days of that, day 1 and day 2. Both of those recordings are available on our training page. Of course, last month's coffee session recording is there if you need it. And then the introduction to CERS, or the California Educator Reporting System, that training recording is up. There's an intro for test coordinators and administrators. I think there's also one that was posted last month, but there's an intro to CERS for teachers as well that's up there. And then there's also the last new coordinator training webinar that covered assessment systems and TOMS, and that recording's also posted. All right. The LEA preview. So like every year, you all get a preview of 24-25 results before the kind of statewide access opens up. And so the LEAs are scheduled to get that preview of results for the 24-25 test administration in mid-September. So, you know, in the next week or two, you're going to get an email with access information sent to all LEA coordinators with information on how to get into your preview. And basically, this preview window gives you the chance to verify a few things. So it lets you verify that all schools in the LEA are included in those school and LEA reports in the test. It's the on the test results for California website. So you can check that all schools in the LEA are included, that all demographic student groups such as race and ethnicity, as well as English language fluency, are all correctly represented there, and the number of students enrolled and tested is accurate. So gives folks a little bit of time to get in there and kind of make sure that all of those things are accurate before that opens up more widely. All right.
Tyler, before you
Yeah.
jump into the next section, I just want to answer a couple of questions that are basically information about when things will be available. So the first question was, when will the California Assessment Accessibility Resources Matrix and Accessibility Resource Graphics be available? The matrix is being finalized now, so that will come available first, and then the graphics will happen after that. So we're thinking the graphics will be available in October, and the matrix sometime before that. And then Judy, if you want to give additional information about that, you're welcome to. And then the question of when will the CAA DFAs be in Tom's? Those are going in this weekend, so you'll be able to download them from Tom's on Monday.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. I also saw we just talked about the preview um, window before the public release. And there was a question, is there a date for the public release, and what's the length of the preview? And Devin answered this in there, but just to say it out loud because other folks might have the same question. The public release will occur on or before October 15th. And so that preview will be, like we said, mid-September. Devin gave us the date of the 12th that hopefully will be available, but sometime soon there through the 24th. So at least a week or week and a half maybe of that preview window. All right. Okay, moving on to our CARS topic. So the CARS is the Crisis Alert Response System. This is not new, but this is just a really important functionality in our systems that we wanted to make sure that we cover early in the year because it does require some attention, some constant attention and action from LEA coordinators. So the Crisis Alert Response System is what identifies any responses in any constructed response that students can enter into the test, as well as the item notes, the digital notepad, and things like that that might warrant immediate attention from someone. So when these come through, these alerts come through, you'll get an email to the appropriate LEA coordinator. And you need to go, when you get those, you need to go into Tom's and actually acknowledge them so that you can tell the system that you've actually seen that notification. And then it's up to you on how your LEA handles that exactly. But we want to just make sure that these responses do warrant immediate attention by the LEA or the site staff. So just make sure that you're aware of how this functions. There's more info on our website, of course. We put a link to the Tom's manual and the chapter on CARS in the chat, and it's in your resource guide as well, of course. And then those alerts are posted to Tom's once an assessment has been submitted or force completed. So this is something that sometimes folks have called in about, that they're not sure why about the timing of when a CARS alert comes through, right? They see a CARS alert and say, oh, this student didn't test recently or something like that. And sometimes what happens is if a student paused a test and um, didn't actually finish the test, and um, this applies to interim assessments as well. So that's sometimes what gets people, that they're not realizing that, a student took half an interim assessment and paused it and didn't actually submit it. And then after a certain amount of days, depending on what the interim or what the assessment is, it could be 45 days later that they've been paused, that test gets expired and force completed. And then that means that it actually gets submitted then. And that's when the CARS, system has the ability to see what that student put in the test. And so if that triggers an alert, it might come at an unexpected time. So um, just wanted to kind of mention that little wrinkle that people might not realize about the timing of when those alerts come through. Um, but so yes, someone asked, are those alert or generated for interim assessments? The answer is yes. Um, and yeah, just make sure that you are up to date on your process at your LEA for how to handle those alerts.
And the email alerts will come every 3 hours during business hours until they're acknowledged. So
Right. Yeah.
so you don't want to ignore them.
Yeah, and then you can acknowledge them and then later like archive them once they've been, dealt with, so that there's a way to kind of track that as well.
And Dina, do you want to remind everybody who else gets the alerts on a every 3 hour basis?
Yeah, so they go to the superintendent and also to the LEA coordinator for that
Thank you.
appropriate test.
Yeah,
Thank you, Dina.
important note there. Thanks, Moses and Dina.
Yep.
All right. So for our test security section, I'm going to hand it over to Moses.
Thank you so much, Tyler. Thank you, everybody. Um, I'd be remiss if I didn't say we had a wonderful experience yesterday. Three of the success agents and myself got the opportunity to spend a day with first year coordinators. How many of you remember that year? Boy, was that something else. It was so much fun to be with them in Fresno. And I say that to transition into test security and to connect this to not only the slide right before and the all important cars, but to just bring us all back to something that one of our veteran coordinators shared yesterday as a word of advice to our newer coordinators. And that was the word of advice that I think that we all need to hear on a daily basis and be reminded of. This is all, every single one of these slides, every single one of the things that we do, that we take our time to do as LEA coordinators, has to do with one thing, and that's our students. And boy, when that veteran coordinator shared that piece of advice with the new coordinators, boy, did that resonate. How important it is for all of us to never forget, to never lose sight, and to always have so present in our minds that we do all of this for one reason, and that's for our students. And that goes with cars, that goes with every single one of the things that Tyler and the team have presented up to now. And that even goes towards this next section that I just want to share a little bit with you about test security. It's for one reason, it's for the well-being of our students. It's for the sake of doing for our students what they deserve, and that's the very best out of everything that we do for them. And so with that in mind, my first reminder, can't connect it more to, again, our students than anything else. And the first reminder, please, as we now get going, and so as you are now so well into initial ELPAC, I hope that we never lose sight and remember this very important first reminder. We need to make sure that we have systems in place for us to be very responsible and careful with protecting our students' personal information and everything that goes along with it in every sense of every assessment that we might be managing. From the interim assessments that you have been doing since day one, to the initial ELPAC that you're all engaged in. And by the way, thank you guys so much, LEA coordinators and your teams. We're 82% already done with the initial ELPAC of all the kids that we had to start testing with the initial ELPAC. So that's a huge accomplishment already. As we continue on, please, let's make sure that we have established procedures and protocols to securely and appropriately handle and protect our students' personal identifiable information. And one of those things is, and please, again, the interim assessments, we shared this with the first year coordinators yesterday. Can't overemphasize the importance of engaging our teachers and students in the use of the interim assessments for how many different things it starts to bring things into order for them, for us. And one of those things is our procedures and protocols on how we handle, like, for example, the student logon credentials. And making sure that we have procedures and protocols in place for all of our testers to know the importance of our students' personal information and how we handle it. And that leads me to, if you need a resource, boy, I can't overemphasize this next point. And the link is right there. How many of you recently taken 14 minutes and 49 seconds to view that whoever put together that amazing video that's right there, and in 14 minutes and 49 seconds did such a masterful job of outlining just about every single important test security protocol and procedure. You need to make sure LEAs, I can't overemphasize the importance of all of us, from us here at ETS and CDE to you at the LEAs, and especially your site people, to take just 14 minutes and 49 seconds to make sure that you patiently, without multitasking, view that video that we've linked there. And I'll tell you a secret. What I just said about personal identifiable information and protocols, the first person that watches that video and sends me an email and says, Moses, I saw the man doing it right when they were distributing the student logons. It's like a 2.5-minute little clip where it shows appropriate procedures for that reminder I just shared there. Shoot me an email, I'll send you a gift. Whoever's the first one to show me that they watched the video and they saw the 2-minute clip where it shows the appropriate procedure and protocol for handling the student logon credentials. Please take a minute, share it with everybody that you know that you're working with. That video is masterfully put together, and it's a wonderful resource for you. And lastly, on the next slide, the last point. And believe it or not, this next point of test security, this announcement I have to share with you, it again goes right back to where I started. This is about our students. This is about our children who we have been entrusted to do the very best for them. And so with that in mind, believe it or not, audits, they are a tool that we want us all to use to make sure that we are doing the very best for our students in how we are managing these assessments. And so as you can see there, we truly, and I truly can say this now, we truly randomly select the schools and LEAs that every year are going to take part of our Tier 1 audit process. Later on this month in September, I will first be sending an email to the LEA coordinators. From those LEAs that have been selected, that you're going to have schools that are going to be part of the Tier 1 audit process. You're going to be getting LEA coordinators an email directed to you where you will have the list of the schools in your LEA that have been randomly selected to take part in the audit. And then it'll explain on there the survey links, the timelines for you to complete them and for you to share with your schools, the information about the links that they need to access in order to complete their Tier 1 audit. And here I'll end with this, that second bullet under the announcement. Again, this is about a resource that we have that we could use to make sure that not just the schools that have been selected, but for all of our schools, to have a clear picture of the appropriate ways that for the sake of our students, we need to do these things correctly. And so LEA coordinators, I encourage you, even if you're not one of the lucky ones that gets an email from me later on this month, please know you have these resources of our Tier 1 audit questions and processes that you could use to share with your schools, to guide their work along the correct ways that we need to do this on behalf of our students. And so with that, please, if you have any follow-up questions now in the Q&A or going forward after this session, please reach out to us. Reach out to your amazing success agents. Ask them any question that you might have questions about with regards to any of this. Shoot me an email. And thank you, guys. I need to end by saying thank you to each and every one of you for all that you do every day for our children. Tyler, thank you very much. And I think I'm handing it back to Dina this time, if I'm not mistaken. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Moses. Yeah, Dina's gonna
Yes.
share some
Thank you,
info about
Moses.
stairs.
Yeah, thank you. So just a few tips for STARS, or the Security and Test Administration Incident Reporting System. So after submitting a STARS case for a one-way or a two-way swap, be sure to confirm a few details in the notes section of the submitted case. And so if you're not sure where that's located, you can go into Tom's and then under STARS, run a search for your particular case, and you'll see a tab at the top of the page for that case, and click onto the notes. And this is where you can communicate with the STARS team. And so when you submit a one-way or a two-way swap, the following are some details that you do have to confirm. And that includes the SSIDs involved. So if it's a one-way or a two-way, you do want to include both of those SSIDs as the correct SSID or the incorrect SSID. The assessment part or domains to be involved. So that would be like an ELPAC domain, or if it's ELA, CAT, something like that, you want to specify which part that would be. The other thing to confirm is the result ID, and you can find those in the completion reports. And so if you're not familiar with one-way swaps and two-way swaps, the differences are as follows. So if you have one student that used the incorrect SSID, and the other student did not do anything with their SSID for that particular test, you can swap the test if it's been completed, and it moves it from the incorrect SSID to the correct SSID. The test does have to be complete before that happens, so a partially completed test cannot be swapped. And so a two-way swap is when two students both complete a test under the incorrect SSID. And so in cases where sometimes students have the same first name and they're accidentally given the incorrect SSID, they'll be given each other's SSID, for example. And then they both complete a test under that incorrect SSID. They can then be swapped, and that's a two-way swap. Okay. And so a separate case must be entered for each assessment part or domain that requires an appeal. And so an example would be if a student was being administered ELPAC, and maybe they used the SSID for multiple domains. Only one submission will only count for that domain. So it's not like a package where you can submit all four domains under the same case. They have to be separate cases. And so that also includes for ELA and math, which have the CAT portion or the computer adaptive portion, as well as the performance task portion. If they need a swap for both, or some kind of a stairs case, you do have to submit a case for each of those portions. Okay. And then another reminder is kindergarten through grade 2 for initial ELPAC writing domain stairs. So those cases must be submitted as an online test mode. And so the confusion sometimes is because the writing domain is administered on a paper answer book. However, if the student is otherwise assigned to an online test, then their writing domain is also considered to be online test mode. And so when you submit reset or reopen for the writing domain, make sure to choose the data entry issue, as the reason for the submission, so you can move on and submit the stairs case from there. All right, and that's all I've got. So I'll hand this over to Sylvia, who's one of our success agents for the call drivers.
Hi, everyone. I'm back. So these are your call drivers for the month of September. We have a couple. One of the hottest topics that's been coming up on the CAASPP side of the program is going to be our CAASPP test administration window, which is basically you telling us when you will be testing your students. And so the main points about this are that it's that time of year. As we approach the deadline, which is December 1st of this year, 2025, same as it's been in the past years, in order for you to have access to go in there, make your updates, just make sure that you do it, I would say early on is my recommendation, because I know that the LEAs in my region in particular, I will hunt you down and make sure that it gets done, just so that you don't run into any hiccups. The reason I do say that, and I want to just point out, it's not in my notes here, but a perfect example would be, say you want to assign a student an alternate assessment, a CAA, and you don't have your testing window set up, or your school sites aren't associated to that test window, you're going to be met with a really unwelcomed error message. It's going to set you back. You might have a student who's just ready to test, and you're going to have that setback. So let's avoid more of those setbacks this year. Set your testing windows up. Make sure that it is a two-step process after you set up that window, or windows for some of you larger LEAs, that you do attach those school sites to those that window or windows that you've opted for. And something that us success agents do to help you guys along the way, once your windows are set up, we actually have access to see which LEAs may have forgotten that second step. So we will give you a little small nudge to remind you, hey, go ahead and connect your school site so there's no any hiccups. And again, that lockdown period or deadline is December 1st. What that means is, come December 1st, you'll no longer have access to it. You will be going through your success agent to make those changes. And so get those done. Something I want to note here as far as the CSA when it comes to your test administration window, it no longer has a test administration window. Has a longer test administration window than the other CAASPP assessments. So it offers you guys more time to test your students, and just to not overwhelm your students with too much testing, should we say. Gives you a little breather, and it gives your student a chance to go ahead and test at their best capacity. And that's going to take me over to our student information system vendor credentialing. My first point here is validate SIS vendors for the 25-26 test administration. What that means is you want to make sure that your SIS vendor, your student information system, for example, Aries or PowerSchool, are set up to be able to accept electronic files from us to them, as in TOMS. This would be SSRs, the data file. Results, so that you can go ahead and be able to provide electronic updates when it comes time. And in order to do that, you want to make sure that your credentials are up to date. And so the credentials are valid for a full year, 365 days a year, sometimes 366. And what that means is when you create those in TOMS, you're going to securely provide them to your SIS vendor. So whether that be Aries or PowerSchool or any of the other lovely SIS vendors, you want to make sure that you securely provide it to them. It's basically a username, a secret key. So it's like username and password combination. You're going to provide it to them. A little tip that's kind of been something that's been holding people up in past administrations is that when you regenerate those credentials, it does have a 24-hour turnaround time. So for example, today, if you were to set up those credentials in TOMS, you share them over to your SIS vendor, the current ones will still remain effective for 24 hours. So just keep that in mind when you're doing that credentialing part of it. And then of course, just keep the information secure. Moses really touched on keeping test security secure. This does include your SIS vendor credentialing. Anything that is, we say secure, keep it secure. And then there's going to be a couple of links that I'm going to put in here for you guys in a second. That's going to link you to the process of adding your test admin windows as well as vendor credentialing. If you guys want to touch more base on this, please feel free, reach out to your success agent so we can help you get that started now before the crazy time comes. And that's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sylvia. All right, and I think Michael Mays is going to jump on here, another success agent of ours, to go through a few more things here for our monthly checklist. I did see though a couple questions about something that you brought up, Sylvia, about the testing window. So I just wanted to mention, so there will be an email that goes out that has like the full instructions and the deadline for setting all that. But just a couple people asked, where do I change that? How do we know our window is set? You wanna very
Yeah.
quickly just refer to kind of where that is in Tom's?
Absolutely. So I'm actually going to put into the chat in just a few moments. There's actually a whole section dedicated to this task um, in the Tom's user guide. So I'm going to post that in there in just a quick moment. As far as like, is it better to have a tighter CAASPP window? It really just depends. It is a local decision. You don't have to take the full window. You can opt to do a tighter window, but just know that as long as you've met that 66% of instruction for the school year, then you'll be able to maximize and take as long as you want for that remaining school year, or you can opt to have it for a tighter window like you mentioned, but that's completely up to you, and it really just depends on your LEA's needs. But give me a second, I can go ahead and post that in there.
Yeah,
Did I
that'd be
answer
great.
the question?
Yes, yeah,
Okay,
definitely.
great.
Thanks, Sylvia. All right, Michael, you can go ahead and take us away on the current slide.
Thank you, Tyler. Welcome back, everybody. Glad to be here. Just going over some resources that we have. Just a reminder of the useful LEA coordinator checklists. They can be found on the public site, caaspp-lpac.org, top of the page, training and collaboration, and then left-hand side, the coordinator how-to hub, and you'll find those right at the top. First, here in the month of September, it's a good time to go ahead, check your form assignments for your California Alternate Assessments, or CAAs, the English Language Arts Assessment, Mathematics, Science, the Summative LPAC, and the Summative Alternate LPAC. And then also participate in the 25-26 California Alternate Assessment 1% Threshold Survey. It's my understanding that's coming out here soon, later in the month of September. Ensure that educators have access to SIRS. That may be, again, creating Tom's roles at the site level, or creating and re-uploading those SIRS student groups so your team can have access to either last year's results or this year's results, depending on the admin year it's uploaded with. Please confirm that security agreements and the security affidavits have been signed. So all of your team members who are going to be administering the assessments have logged directly into Tom's to sign those security forms. And that's specifically what releases the assessments to be available in the TA interface. So if you ever get calls that your team's only seeing interim assessments, that's going to be the culprit. They need to sign those security affidavits and give it that 45 minutes to an hour. And then it's also a good time to review individualized education program and Section 504 plans for your students to see what supports they may need, or for those that may be eligible for the alternate assessments. And so that's just a quick breakdown of what the LEA coordinator checklist have for us here. And again, it's by month, and so you're welcome to check those out, get ahead of those tasks, or be reminded of those tasks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. All right, a few reminders and other
Tyler,
topics. Oh, yeah.
I think Moses might have
No,
something
go ahead.
that he
I'm
wants
sorry.
to
No,
share.
go ahead, Tyler. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, feel free to, you can interrupt me at any
Yeah,
time you want,
appreciate it.
Moses. But we'll go through the reminders here real quick, and then we'll get to anything else we want to cover. So this is a reminder to try to complete initial LPAC and initial alternate LPAC testing prior to Census Day, which is October 1st, 2025. So completing those before then will allow newly enrolled students to be included in the unduplicated pupil count, which is used to determine funding for the supplemental and concentration grants under the local control funding formula. So that is why that is an important deadline for folks to know. Completion for those is defined as completing all 4 domains for the initial ELPAC or the entire initial alternate ELPAC. So keep that in mind. That October 1st date is a pretty critical one there. A few more reminders. So any changes to accessibility resources have already been in place since the phase 1 rollover back in early July, but some of those updates are not quite yet in the practice and training tests, and so these enhancements will be added though to those practice and training tests on September 16th. So like there's a few changes that we've talked about already in previous copy sessions. I think, several of these things were mentioned at the AIM sessions as well, but login workflow updates, there's a new view of strike through, there's a new menu for accessibility controls, there's a few embedded resources like the hundreds number table and multiplication table. So just a lot of little tweaks that are new this year to all of the testing platforms and will be added to practice and training tests. So all of these things will be, not only will be in the updated accessibility matrix that somebody asked about earlier in the session, that's being updated right now. So these kinds of changes will be included in that document. We're always working on updating other resources as well that have some of these features. The accessibility guide is also being updated alongside the matrix. So all of that should be pretty accessible to all of that information, but we wanted to make sure to mention those coming to the practice and training tests as well.
And Tyler, adding on to the resources, the ELPAC Online Test Administration Manual has the enhancements that are available to those tests listed under what's new. So that's another example of where you can find assessment-specific enhancements.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Dina. A couple more reminders. So for the rotating score validation process, or RSVP, make sure that you are returning the first batch of completed initial ELPAC K through 2 writing answer books. If you're selected for that RSVP, that you're returning those answer books after you locally enter scores into the DEI, or the data entry interface. So you should be entering all those scores. And then I believe also there was a question earlier about this, about notifying the parents about the scores before sending those back in as well. I'm going to go double check that, but yeah, just making sure that you're actually entering those scores before you send those answer books back. And then another reminder, we've been talking about results a lot, and mentioning that, if there were any remaining scores, that those were coming. So now all of the remaining scores for Smarter Balance, for ELA and Math, CAASPP, the CAAs, Summative ELPAC, and Summative Alternate ELPAC, all of those remaining scores have been released. Just wanted to make sure that was clear. Emails, go out about those scores as well, but an important note there. And then I think we have maybe 1 or 2 slides left here. So the coming up pretty soon, the CAA for Science window opening up on September 16th. And we've mentioned this before, but new for this year, new for 25-26, there are 3 embedded performance tasks instead of 4 for the CAA for Science. And the resource of the administration planning guides, it has been updated and is really useful for trying to schedule out those different performance tasks throughout the year. So definitely recommend that you check those out. And then an email was sent to LEA coordinators and technology coordinators on August 20th, 2025, with the detailed updates to supporting operating systems and secure browsers. So that is a good thing to double check at this point in the year, that you are fully aware of your plan for updating and know where all those updates are taking place if needed for devices that students are testing on. So make sure you check out that email. And several of those links are in the chat. Thanks to Sylvia as well. All right, we got through all of our prepared topics. We answered a bunch of questions along the way. Thank you to our CDE and ETS folks for answering questions in the Q&A feature in Zoom. If you've asked a question in there, make sure you go and check it out. You should be able to see answers directly to your questions and everybody else's if you had the same question as someone else. But we'll go through here and see if there's any we can finish up an answer here. Let's see. I don't know if anybody has something that they want to cover right away. Feel free to jump in and interrupt me, but I'm gonna.
Tyler, I'll jump in right now.
Yeah, go for it,
typing
Jeff.
one up.
Thanks.
If for LEAs, and this is an LEA, RSVP have not received their labels. If you've not received your labels yet, we did have a calendar dates for those. Both the pre-ID labels and your the pre-gridded GIS sheet should have come together. So if you have one, you most likely have both. So if you want, reach out to your success agent, because we could definitely track that for you. If not, look around your warehouses or your offices. We have had a few LEAs where they went to an office building that they weren't expecting them to. So let us know. But if you have your GIS sheets, you should have pre-ID labels as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Jeff. Let's see. Yeah, so pre-IDs. I see a question, can I confirm, do LEAs need to set their instructional calendar in order for the CAA for Science, a fixed window to be ready to roll for LEA schools to start administering? So if you have a fixed, for assessments that have the fixed window in TOMS, you don't need to actually set those in order to start testing. So it's mostly for the CAASPP that testing window selection has that critical deadline.
And Tyler, I just wanted
Yeah.
to say, because I saw this question about CAA for Science earlier, the person was asking if there's any type of penalty for administering all of the performance tasks in one day. And so I just wanted to remind folks that the intent of the CAA for Science is to administer those performance tasks directly after instruction, so that the student can do as well as they possibly can on the assessment. And so it is not a good practice to administer them all at once. That's not how the test was intended. So if you need help with how to schedule those, there's some administration planning guides on the website that can help you with that as well.
Thanks, Christine. Let's see, there were a few questions I had marked, but they're buried now because folks are answering so many. So I wanted to, let's see.
Tyler, I
Yeah.
will say another one was someone had mentioned, are they testing TK in ELPAC again? Apparently there's some rumors going around. There has been no change to that. So no testing TK students in ELPAC.
Right. Yes. Thank you. There was a question about, I just thought it might be helpful to mention this out loud. We talked about CARS, the Crisis Alert Response System, going to coordinators and superintendents. Eric Wenrick asked just to clarify, does it go to all LEA coordinators? And the answer is yes. So it's maybe good to just say that out loud, that it goes to anybody who's listed as an LEA coordinator, so not just the primary. Excuse me, but I should clarify, it'll go to the appropriate program coordinator. So if it's a CAASPP test, it'll go to the all LEA CAASPP coordinators. If it's an ELPAC test, it'll go to all LEA ELPAC coordinators. But again, not just the primary. Let's see.
Tyler, do you mind if I answer one live here?
Absolutely, go for it.
It's kind of a follow-up. We have a question here that says, to clarify about the CAA window, it appears that you do have to set up your LEA instructional calendar. I do want to clarify that yes, you do.
Oh, okay.
It does
Thank
have
you.
to be established before doing anything with CAAs. And the reason for that is that when the coordinators or the site coordinators come to the point of assigning students a CAA or all of the CAAs, if that window is not established, they're going to be met with that funky message that I was mentioning earlier, stating that the school site is not attached to a window. And so, yes, you do want to get those set up in order to proceed with your CAAs.
Thank you, Sylvia. Appreciate that correction.
And Tyler, I also wanted to mention, I did see someone out there that's a new coordinator that's struggling, and Moses is going to reach out to them directly and help them out. But I did want to tell folks about the Regional Assessment Network. If you are not familiar with the Regional Assessment Network, I will post a link to this in the chat here in just a minute. But it's a group of people, and these are really seasoned coordinators that have some local groups that come together and they do meetings maybe every other month. If you are not connected to one of those groups, I recommend that you do get connected to one of those groups, because they are a great resource for talking to them about best practices, about how they do things. And, even if they've created their own resources that you can start from, a lot of them are willing to share with you. So I will post post that in the chat, the link, and be sure to get connected with one of those groups if you're needing support. Go ahead, Moses.
Yeah, timely, Tyler, if I can interject and add to what Christine just said. And I know that, Rabia, thank you so much for emailing me so quickly. I just got your email. I put and this, I guess I'll share it with everyone in the chat or in the Q&A. I posted my email. And as I did with Rabia right now, she emailed me within 5 minutes and set up some personal time for you and I to meet. That's exactly why I'm here, Rabia, and the rest of you, especially you first-year coordinators. Any kind of support like that you have. I have, again, my email, and Tyler or Christine will put it again in the Q&A for anybody that's going to take advantage of this right now. Shoot me an email. We'll set up some time. We'll talk through these things. And to what Christine just said, so timely. First year coordinators, if you are anywhere near the Sacramento area, I would have loved to say if you're anywhere near Fresno, but that was yesterday. But if you're anywhere near the Sacramento area, we got people coming all the way from the Oregon border. I think that's further up. We got this Friday, if you're not aware of it, this Friday here in Sacramento, 3 of our amazing success agents and I, along with, and Sylvia, yeah, she'll be there. Sylvia, me, and a few other of our amazing success agents this Friday with our amazing team from SCOE. We're going to be there for exactly you, first year coordinators, and any other coordinator that wants to come and spend the day with colleagues and our team from ETS, the CDE, and SCOE around exactly what Christine just said, networking with others that are in this together with you. So this Friday will be in Sacramento. And then if anybody is all the way to the southern border, in San Diego and up, next Monday, we'll be doing the same thing with our partners from LACO and SCOE, some success agents and I. Next Monday is your session in Los Angeles. And this Friday, if you've not heard about it, I have no idea where to register for it, or if you even need to, shoot us an email. We'll let you know how to register. But this Friday, we'll be in Sacramento at the Sacramento County Office of Education for any new coordinator that wants to start networking.
Yeah,
And
to
then again,
piggyback off of that, Moses, I would say for those of you
awesome.
interested to come out and hang out with us for the
Yes.
day on Friday or Monday, send that inquiry to your success agent so we can get you all that information.
Thank you, Sylvia. Yes. And thank you, Christine.
Yeah, appreciate it, Moses.
There's also a question in the chat, and I'm not really sure of the answer, so I might call on Devin or Chad to help me, but they asked if they have an outside vendor that they're contracting with for accountability and progress monitoring, can we add them as a district coordinator? My initial gut would tell me no, because they would have access to all of your student data, which you probably don't want. But I don't know, Moses or Chad or Devin, did you want to add more there?
Hey, Christine. Yeah, this is Devin. Yeah, we recently had this question a while back, and um, you know, this may come down to a local decision because if you're contracting with this individual, you are providing them personal identifiable information. So, you know, it would be your responsibility to make sure that contractor is protecting student information and not disclosing that in a way that would violate their privacy.
Devin, can I ask, do you feel that the vendor, if they signed a non-Tom security affidavit, would that suffice?
I do not know for certain. I mean, that does provide assurance that they won't disclose that, but
Yes.
I would have to take another look at that affidavit.
This is Chad, too, from the CDE, and I just want to say that, you know, it is allowable to provide somebody who's got a contract with your district, a vendor, with access to something like SIRS. I do not recommend the district coordinator role for that purpose. I mean, there's much lower level roles that could be provided. If they're looking for data in SIRS, they could have an educator role in SIRS or something like that. But I do not recommend the district, specifically the district level role. I agree with everything else that Devin said.
And Chad, if I may add to that, the other concern about a district coordinator role that I have, as opposed to if it's just data from SIRS, the access to content, to our secure content, that is also something that we need to be very careful about. So to that LEA, please, if you would like to follow up with me on this issue of this access, please do. Again, my email is in the Q&A right now. We need to talk this through. Because even though, as Chad said, there are provisions, we need to make sure that we protect the integrity of not only the data and the personal identifiable information, but the content of these assessments that you would be giving them access to with an account like the district coordinator account. So please reach out. We'll walk through this and we'll talk further about this in detail if you'd like.
Yeah, and Aaron, sorry about that, Chad, but yeah, Aaron Gordon also in the Q&A added that the vendor would need an MOU with the LEA regarding PII as well. So might be something to consider. But yeah, like you said, Moses, we did put your email in the chat as well, actually. So especially a complicated question about test security, something like that is a great thing to reach out to Moses about. But I will remind you just to, you know, if you have if you can't find your password, you maybe reach out to your success agent before reaching out to Moses. He's a busy guy. It might take him a while to get back to you about that. Yeah, I did just in the chat as well put the link to our contact page. I know there's a lot of information, you know, especially if you're new to your role and you're with us. I mean, thank you, first of all, you know, for jumping into that. There's a lot of information out there, and there's a lot of people though, that are ready to support you. It's sometimes hard to know exactly who to reach out to. So I put that contact page in there because that has our phone line to our Caltech folks and our lookup tool for success agents, so you can see who your assigned success agent is and email them directly. If you get a relationship set up with them, they are going to be able to help you with so many different things. Christine mentioned the RAN groups as well, and that is a great resource. Obviously, there's a lot of trainings and resources out there too, but on that contact page is like other the CDE email addresses. If you have questions specifically, I saw a few questions going back and forth about ELPAC classification changes, reclassification and all of that. You might need to reach out to the CDE specifically. So there's a lot of good information on there. If we haven't answered your question today in the Q&A or anything, definitely reach out to us and we will do our best to get your questions answered.
Tyler, if I may, please, any new coordinator, and I mentioned this, and Nikki, our partner from SCOE, make sure new coordinators look at the chat right now. For what I said is coming up on Friday, Nikki Antonovich from SCOE just put the link. You want to register for this Friday right now in the chat. The link is there to be able to register either for this Friday or for next Monday's new coordinator convening. Please take a minute if you haven't already done so. The link is in the chat. Register for this session that's coming up Friday. Thank you, Nikki.
Definitely. All right. Well, we are a minute over, so I'm gonna thank you all, those who answered questions and those who asked questions. Appreciate it. And we will see you next month. We'll be back like usual and on October 14th for that coffee session. And if you have any other questions, make sure to reach out to us and we'll get those answered. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Bye,
everybody.
all.
Bye.